as we do your will for our city. We ask that you protect and guide the men and women serving our community, our state, and our nation. Be with them in all that they do. And tonight, we particularly pray for the survivors and the families of the victims of the terrorist attack that occurred in Orlando yesterday, and for your presence, your power, and your peace. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Okay, can I have a motion and a second to excuse Mayor Lord tonight? She's at the Conference of Mayors.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Joe Pizzillo, and I have a second from Councilmember Osborne. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. Okay, now we have communications. We have one communications item tonight, and that is to recognize the winner of the Mayor's Select Art Show from spring of 2016, and Guyleen Olensky, for our Arts and Culture Coordinator. She will present.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. I would like to ask our Arts and Culture Commissioners that are here with us tonight to join me, please. I am Guyleen Oslansky, Arts and Culture Coordinator, and with me tonight we have a few of our Arts and Culture Commissioners to help recognize these wonderful students that have joined us. We have Chairman Brian Driscoll, Commissioner Laura Cano, Commissioner Karen Olson, and Commissioner Rosemarie Putnam, and I thank them for being here this evening. So before we begin, I really want to take some time just to thank all the people that make this program the success that it is. We are in our third year for Mayor Select, and when we began this in fiscal year 14, we had 44 entries for that year. This year in fiscal year 16, we've upped that to 132 entries. These are all Goodyear students, and it's amazing the talent that we have here in our city. So to begin with, the biggest thank you goes out to our sponsor, which is Palm Valley Pediatric Dentistry. And I'd like to invite Dr. Olga Dolgier up to come and join us to present, please. Just for a moment, Dr. Olga, she goes by at the practice, they have been our exclusive sponsors for this program, and we've given away almost $10,000 in scholarship money to date, all because of Dr. Olga and Palm Valley Pediatric Dentistry. So if we could, please give them a hand. Another very key component to this program are the educators that we have in Goodyear. We have some great arts educators, and they really strive to give these kids a great foundation on what art is, how to make great art. And with us tonight, I would ask her to stand. We have Esther Allman. She is the art teacher from Trivium Prep Academy. Esther, could you please stand? Many of Esther's students are with us tonight and will be recognized. Thank you, Esther, for all that you do. Also, we would like to recognize the families, and we have quite a few families here. They provide that encouragement. They really strive to make sure their students are, developing as a whole child, and we really appreciate all that they do to keep their kids involved and engaged and being creative. And finally, we'll move on to recognize our artists, what we are here for. So artists, as I call your name, you're going to come up, you're going to receive your award and your ribbon, and I would like for you to stay standing here at the right-hand side of us so we can take a group picture at the end. Also, I'd ask Vice Mayor Loretano if you could join us down here for our recognition. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you. All right, so to begin with, we're going to recognize our junior winners. And our junior winners are students that reside in Goodyear, and they're in the 6th through 8th grade. And I'd like to start by asking our honorable mention students to come up, Hannah Hager and Fabiana Delgadillo. It looks like they couldn't join us this evening, but they did some amazing artwork, and we will make sure they get their certificates. Next, we'd like to move on to recognizing our top winners in 3 categories. Our categories in our junior division are drawing, painting, and photography. And our top drawing winner is Isabella Ruiz. She's an 8th grader from Trivium Prep Academy, and her artwork was titled Blue Nature. Our next winner is for a top painting, and we are going to recognize Avery Levitt. She is a 7th grader at Trivium Prep Academy for her artwork titled Genie. Avery, could you please join us? And I would like to mention that each of these students is receiving $100. I don't believe our next student was able to join us this evening, but for our top photograph for our junior awards was Grace Davis. She was a 7th grader at Westar Elementary School, and her artwork was titled Sunset in Paradise. She will receive $100 to put towards her higher education. So thank you. All right, we're going to move on to our senior winners now. And our senior winners, these are our students that are in 9th through 12th grade that reside in Goodyear. And as you can see, we have some additional categories in our senior division. We recognize drawing, painting, photography, and 3D artwork, as well as recognizing a best in show. And I'd like to first ask our honorable mention winners to come up. I'm going to read through the names. If you could each come up, please. We do have your award certificate up here. I'd like to start with Michael Santos. Allison Latona. Next, I'd like to invite Jenna Fox up front. Jared Blackham. William Tho. And Michaela Daniels. I want to thank all of these students for their work. As you can see, with 132 entries, it's really quite an accomplishment to be recognized in Mayor Select, and they did some amazing work, so thank you. We're going to move now into our top awards. I would like to recognize our top drawing winner. She's not able to be with us this evening. She is traveling, but it's Kelsey Phillips. She's a 10th grader at Millennium High School, and her artwork was Antithesis. Next, I'd like to recognize the top painting, and I'd like to ask Ethan Diaz to come up front. He's 11th grader at Desert Edge High School, and his artwork was titled Girly Drinks. Ethan's receiving $200 to put towards his higher education. Next, we want to recognize our top photograph, and this was Jordan Kinini, 12th grader, Desert Edge High School. The artwork's titled Trixie. Jordan also received $200. Next, we'd like to recognize our top 3D artist, and that is Tristan Sargent. He's a 12th grader at Desert Edge High School for his artwork titled Wet Willie. Tristan also received an award of $200. And finally, we would like to move on to our Best in Show winner. Our Best in Show winner actually wins $500 puts towards their higher education. And our Best in Show winner this year is Kaylee Christian. She's 11th grader from Trivium Prep Academy, and her artwork was A New Kind of New York. Thank you, everyone. I think we're going to get everyone together to take a group picture in front of council if we could. And I just want to encourage all these artists to continue to follow their creative path. It's amazing what you've already accomplished, and I look forward to seeing what else you will do.
Congratulations.
Maybe they'll do that next year.
Did you see him while they were in City Hall?
Vice Mayor, Council, thank you so much for your encouragement and ability to be able to continue these great arts programs. As you can see, it's really making an impact on our community. Hope you enjoy it. We had quite a few of our students at our music fest just last April. We have a picture of that, and I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
And thank you, Guyleen. And I'm sure some people up here would like to congratulate all the students as well. So anybody on this end? We'll start with Sherilyn.
Well, I was absolutely stunned with the artwork that was presented in that. You are amazing, and what a delight to know that you're in Goodyear. I thank you for participating and look forward to seeing more of your work.
I just want to thank everyone as well, and add with Sherilyn, we really thank Dr. Olga for being our sponsor of this event, because art is so important to our city, and we are very proud of all of you, and we hope that you continue to grow in your art.
I just wanted to thank Dr. Olga and Guyleen and the Arts and Culture Commission for continuing this program. It's awesome. And to the winners tonight, you know what? Our city is impacted by everything you do. And your future also will be impacted on the creativity that you have. So believe in yourself, because you're already making a step that is impactful, and we love it, and continue to brighten everybody's day.
Councilmember Stipp.
I was waiting to be at the very end for some reason.
Okay, go.
No, that's okay. Sorry. Dr. Olga, thank you very much. I had, for whatever reason, I had no idea that it had grown to this size and scholarship. So thank you very much for that. To our artists, it's been, some of you I noticed were 12th grade, so that means you're moving on from this process, and others are quite young, and I look forward to seeing you again over the next few years as we continue this. So thank you for participating, and we're going to see this artwork in City Hall, right?
The artwork was on display at City Hall, and then at the Goodyear Library, the students are actually taking their work with them tonight so that we make sure it gets back into their hands. But we look forward to seeing their artwork next fall.
Well, that's the perils of having traveled for the last 6 weeks or 8 weeks or so. I haven't been around City Hall, so I didn't get to see much of it. But I'm very curious in the Wet Willie, so if we have a photo of that, I'd like to see it.
Again, Dr. Olga, I know I'm going to sound a repeat on some of this, but again, I appreciate you stepping up and being part of the community and sponsoring these events. And to the artists, continue following your dreams and honing on your craft. And again, congratulations, and I hope many more successes in the future.
And I'll just finish it up again. Thank you, Dr. Olga, and all the parents that were there supporting their kids, and all the students who did such a wonderful job. And thank you, Guyleen, and your commission, because without them and setting this all up, we wouldn't have it. So thank you, and we look forward to next year.
Thank you very much.
Okay, now is the time for any citizens who would like to address the City Council on any non-agenda item. I have a speaker card, but are there any? That's not on that's on an agenda item, right?
That's correct.
Okay. Are there any on any non-agenda items?
No, Vice Mayor.
Is there anyone from the audience who wishes to speak on a non-agenda item? And I don't see any hands, so I guess we will move on then. Okay, now is the time set for the consent agenda, and we will be pulling item 6.9 from the consent agenda, and we'll put that at the end of the business agenda for a staff presentation. So will the city clerk please read the consent agenda items 6.1 through 6.8 by title only?
Item 6.1, approve draft minutes from a regular meeting held on May 23rd, 2016. Item 6.2, adopt resolution number 16-1756, approving the development agreement for Cotton Commons regarding the development of an approximate 40-acre parcel generally located at the southwest corner of Lower Buckeye Road and the 173rd alignment, 1/4 mile west of Cotton Lane, providing for authorization and direction to take actions and execute documents necessary to carry out intent of resolution and the development agreement for Cotton Commons and providing for an effective date. Item 6.3, adopt resolution 16-1754, approving amended and restated development agreement for La Privada regarding the development of 198 acres generally located at the southeast corner of Perryville and the Harrison Road alignment, providing authorization and direction to take actions and execute documents necessary to carry out intent of resolution and the amended and restated development agreement for La Privada and providing for an effective date. Item 6.4, adopt resolution 16-1769, approving amended and restated development agreement for El Cedro regarding the development of approximately 336 acres, generally located west of 169th Avenue, east of Citrus Road, south of Lower Buckeye Road, and north of Broadway Road, providing authorization and direction to take actions and execute documents necessary to carry out intent of resolution and the amended and restated development agreement for El Cedro and providing for an effective date. Item 6.5, authorize the mayor to execute an intergovernmental agreement to lease portions of the Goodyear Justice Center to the City of Litchfield Park for use by the Litchfield Park Municipal Court. Item 6.6, appoint Councilman Member Sherilyn Homan as representative and Councilmember Wally Campbell as the alternate to the Maricopa County Community Development Advisory Committee for FY 2016-2017. Item 6.7, approve a replat of Tract 19G, Parcel 19, Pod 4 of the Master Plat of Cantamia Phases 2 and 3 to create Lot 170. Item 6.8, authorize the city manager to sign each of the requested licenses and easements from the city to Liberty Utilities for their aquifer replenishment facility.
Does anyone from the public wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none. Does anyone from the council wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Stipp and a second from Councilmember Campbell. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Loretano?
Aye.
Passes 6-0.
And we're going to do 6-9 at the end. So we're going to move on to the business agenda. And I would like to remind the council to refrain from asking questions until the staff has completed their presentation and we have a motion on the table. So we'll start with 7.1. The first item on the business agenda is to consider the appointment of the Water Conservation Committee. And Sandra Rose, Water Conservation Specialist, will present.
Good evening, Vice Mayor and Council members. Pleased to be before you tonight to take up the citizen engagement portion of a project that we've already discussed a couple of times. At this time of year, we're very aware, all of us, that water is an important part of our lives. Can't miss it when it gets this hot. And indeed, the water use pattern throughout the city reflects the fact that we all value this environment, but that it takes some water to live here. About 60 to 70% of our water is used outdoors each year. Balancing how we make this a livable environment with the fact that we need to be very careful how we use water is a careful balance we have to keep. In 2014 to 2015, you appointed a water planning committee to take up some of the things we needed to do to assure that supply was solid and to recommend a rate structure that would protect that. During their discussion, the Commission frequently brought up the topic of water conservation. But at the end of their report, they noted that they didn't really have time to take it up and recommended that Council consider appointing a committee to focus on water conservation. In February, Council took up this proposal and voted to establish an ad hoc water conservation committee. And in May, your subcommittee on the board and commission and committees viewed applicants and had made recommendations as to who can serve on this committee. Today, we've come before you again to have you vote to appoint those members and swear them in to serve on the Water Conservation Committee beginning July 19th.
Thank you very much. Are there any speaker cards? No, Vice Mayor. Thank you. Okay. Would anyone in the audience like to speak? Seeing none. Can I have a motion and a second to appoint Jennifer Barber, Marlon Booth, Mario Columbia, Arthur Faoli, Jack Gilmore, Susan Kagan, Laura Cano, Pete Minark. I hope I got that right. Yes, I got it. Okay. Jackson Mole, Randy Smith, and Pete Tyke as members of the Water Conservation Committee for a term expiring June 30th, 2018.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Campbell, and I have a second from Councilmember Pizzillo. Open for council discussion.
Go forth and save us water.
Anybody on that side? Okay, I just want to say thank you all for stepping up and serving, and we've got some people that came back, so obviously it was a good process the first time, so thank you very much. So let's, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it. Okay, now I guess you're going to swear them in after both together, right? Okay. So can I now have a motion as second to appoint Christy Lagunas and Thomas Neath as alternate members of the Water Conservation Committee for the term expiring June 30th, 2018?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Pizzillo and a second from Councilmember Stipp. Open for council discussion? Having none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. And now the city clerk will appoint and administer the oath of loyalty.
They've given us all the names, but who do the names belong to?
All right, I'd like you to hold up your right hand and please repeat after me. I state your name. Do solemnly affirm that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution and laws of the state of Arizona, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and defend them against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of Water Conservation Committee member according to the best of my ability. So I do affirm. Congratulations. Very good. Thanks for stepping up.
Maureen.
Thank you so much for participating. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Maureen, can we have them all introduce themselves so we know who goes to who?
You want to go ahead, just take this and just introduce yourselves and just pass the mic.
All right, my name is Mario Columbia. I'm the chairman. I was the chairman of the Water Planning Committee, but here I am with the Water Conservation Committee, so pretty excited.
Hi, I'm Jen Barber. I'm a resident in the city of Goodyear, and I'm thrilled about this, so thank you.
I'm Jackson Mall. I'm the Vice President of Municipal Affairs for the Home Builders Association of Central Arizona, and I want to thank the council for the appointment, and I look forward to working with your community.
Pete Tyke, I work on the Estrella project, and also looking forward to this.
Laura Cano, City of Phoenix retiree, worked at Phoenix Water.
Christy Lagunas, resident of Goodyear, excited to be part of the group.
Hi, my name is Arthur Fiello, and I've been working in the water business for about 18 years. I'm also a resident of the city of Goodyear, and I'm excited to be here. Thank you.
My name is Jack Gilmore. I'm a landscape architect, land planner. I've been practicing in the Valley for 34 years and glad to be a resource. Thank you.
I'm Randy Smith. I'm a resident of Estrella. Looking forward to being a part of the committee and trying to come up with some solutions to work on this critical issue.
My name is Susan Kagan. I'm a resident of Pebble Creek, and I was previously a 10-year member of the Citizens Advisory Group for the Plume, and I'm excited to be working on the Conservation Committee.
Marlon Booth. I'm a resident of this great city for 12 years now. Finally out volunteering, helping out the city. Happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, now we're going to move on to 7.2. The next item on the business agenda is to consider the appointments to the Planning and Zoning Commission. So Katie Wilkham, our planning manager, will now present.
Thank you, Vice Mayors and members of the council. We recently had 2 commissioners who moved out of the city of Goodyear, so unfortunately that meant they had to resign their Planning and Zoning Commission seats. The Council Subcommittee for Boards, Commissions, and Committees met to review applications, and so I have for you tonight their recommendation for the appointees of the 2 vacancies. The first is to appoint Janet Keys to fulfill Kathleen Short's term, which expires January 31st, 2019. The next is to appoint Shelly Milton, who will fill Ryan Peters' term, which will expire February 9th, 2018. You might remember, too, Ryan Peters was our chair, and so just as an aside, at the last meeting, Patrick Ray was appointed the chairman, and Randy Barnes was appointed the vice chairman. And so as you can see, the motion is to appoint both of those members, and then if appointed, the city clerk will administer the oath. I'd be happy to answer any questions. We're very excited to get them filled, and if filled, we're getting them started to work on Wednesday already, so right away.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards? No, Vice Mayor. Can I have a motion and a second to appoint Janet Keys to the Planning and Zoning Commission to fulfill Kathleen Short's term expiring January 31st, 2019, or until their successors are appointed and qualified?
So moved.
Second.
And I have a motion from Councilmember Holman and a second from Councilmember Campbell. Open for council discussion.
I just wanted to thank Kathleen and Ryan for their service on our commission, and I'm looking forward to our 2 new ladies. Appreciate you stepping up, and planning and zoning is a very important commission to our city, and so I'm really excited to have you.
Again, anybody on this council knows how I feel about our volunteers. They are our most valuable resource, in my opinion, and I know our others on here in our community. What makes us great for both the water conservation and also for the committee that we're talking about voting on now, over 28,000 hours, and that's just that dedicated to our city, the hundreds of thousands of dollars they save us. And that's what makes us, in my view, one of the greatest communities. We're not just a collection of neighborhoods, but a true community. So again, all of you that have stepped up on either the water conservation or on the actual planning committee, really appreciate your time, because you could be doing something else and you're giving your time to this city. And for that, I thank you.
I think Councilmember Pizzillo said it best, so I'll just add my heartfelt thanks on top of that, and we'll ask for a motion, or we'll ask for all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It passes. So now we are going to go to the second one, and can I have a motion and second to appoint Shelly Milton to the Planning and Zoning Commission to fulfill Ryan Peters' term expiring February 9th, 2018, or until their successor is appointed and qualified?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Holman and a second from Councilmember Stipp. Open for council discussion. I don't think we have any further. So all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the city clerk will now administer the oath of loyalty.
Shelly and Janet, please come on up. Okay, if you could please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
Shelly Milton.
Do solemnly affirm.
That
I will support.
the
The Constitution of the United States.
Constitution of the United States
And the Constitution and laws.
and the Constitution and laws
Of the state of Arizona.
of the state of Arizona.
That I will bear true faith.
That I will bear true faith
And allegiance to the same.
and allegiance to the same
And defend them.
and defend them
Against all enemies.
against all enemies,
Foreign and domestic.
foreign and domestic,
And that I will faithfully.
and that I will faithfully
And impartially.
and impartially
Discharge the duties.
discharge the duties
Of Planning and Zoning Commissioner.
as Planning and Zoning Commissioner
According to the best of my ability.
according to the best of my ability.
So I do affirm.
So I do affirm.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move on to 7.3. So the next item on the business is a public hearing to consider an amendment to the Lucero Planned Area Development. Alex Litinsky, Planner 2, will present.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Loretano. Members of the council, good evening. The PAD amendment before you this evening is a request from Newland Communities. The Lucero PAD was included as an attachment in your packets and has been requested to replace the existing Callisto PAD amendment, which was originally a part of Estrella Phase 1 PAD. The PAD that was included in your packet is a more finalized version of the PAD, and the presentation I have on the screen is what was originally submitted and clearly highlights and redlines the requested changes to the PAD. I pulled out specific pages with the change marks, like I said, for the presentation. And if I skip through them too quickly, please let me know. Some of the pages have very minor changes, such as page 2, which, as you can see, outlines the page numbers, which have changed due to additional pages, and makes note of what the highlight and the red lines mean. So on page 6, which is page 3 of my presentation, the request is outlined at the bottom paragraph. And so the amendment request is to refine the land use plan and table, add to the development standards and lot sizes.
I didn't see it. No, it wasn't.
The presentation was not included with the red line version. I know. No, thank you.
I was looking for it too.
So the continuing the plan and table, the land use plan and table has been changed. The development standards and lot sizes have been expanded on, and it introduces a commercial zoning for a future welcome center. So I'm going to skip a little bit to this page. I kept page 20 in the presentation to show the comparison of the conceptual lot strategies from the 2013 past PAD, which is Callisto, and then the 2016 proposal. The goal of Lucero, and even previously as Callisto, was to bring about the neighborhood cluster development strategy to maintain those hillside developments. And so you can see the comparison. It's not very much different as far as the layout. On page 34, the request is clear, a little bit more clear, repeated as I did note on page 6. 5 through 9 were added as the new requests. And then I did want to point out too that as number 13 says, the maximum number of dwelling units is not changing and will still not exceed 1250. So page 35 of the PAD is a side-by-side comparison of the original Estrella Phase 1 PAD versus what was approved with the Callisto PAD amendment, and then the existing 2016 proposed Lucero PAD amendment. As you can see, there's a lot of low and low-medium density land use types. The average densities are not significantly changing on the parcels. If we zoom in a little bit, we can see that the densities do change, but it's not more than 1 to 2 units per acre. The variation of densities is still consistent with what the PAD allows, but the overall goal and what is highlighted as changes in development standards allows for more flexible product type within those parcels. Here we can see the phasing plan changed a little bit. Phase 1 was expanded on a little bit more and includes a little bit more of the top portion, which is 1A and 1B. 39 through 41, the pages in the book that you do have, are actually the stipulations of approval with the Callisto PAD. They've just been adjusted to reflect the Lucero PAD amendment. So some of the stipulations that said in accordance with the Callisto PAD amendment have been changed to say Lucero. And this is great for our end because we don't have to add so many stipulations at the end of the PAD approval because they're already written into the PAD. And then 2 stipulations have been requested to make minor changes to. Number 20, the neighborhood greens may be designed and landscaped depressions that in part will capture and retain their own stormwater runoff. And then 47 by 90 foot lots have been added as an exception to stipulation 26. As we continue to scroll, we can see some paragraphs have been added through the original document. These are just the stipulations just further added for better comparison and use for when a planner, myself, or the developer continues to use the book for reference. They're a little bit more distributed evenly for better reference. So page 58 is I'm really excited about. It does incorporate the neighborhood commercial C1 zoning into this little area right behind the Star Tower. This was not included in the Callisto PAD. However, it will include a new welcome center site, which will have a coffee shop, or hopefully have a coffee shop, a bike and trail shop, and will be a trailhead for a lot of the new trails within Lucero. And then future uses of the site would still maintain that neighborhood commercial zoning and can be developed as such according to the C1 zoning standards. The design criteria within, or the design guidelines within the PAD have been expanded on a little bit further. Like I said, some of those are the stipulations that were within the original approval. The design requirements for the 47 by 90 foot lots, sometimes we would not prefer those because they are such smaller lots and tend to be more garage dominant. Newland and Swabeck have done a great job partnering with the home builders and coming up with some great design guidelines that prevent garage dominance from happening. And one of their main reasons too why they're wanting the 47 by 90 foot lots is because they've noticed that that's been a trend in the market and has been selling pretty popularly. With that being said, all public hearing notices have been satisfied. The neighborhood meeting that was held in Estrella was very successful. It was an open dialogue between residents and the developer. Everyone had positive feedback. Staff hasn't heard any complaints or any questions about, hasn't received any phone calls about it. The PAD remains consistent with the city's general plan. Planning and Zoning Commission unanimously moved to recommend approval, and staff recommends approval and adoption of the ordinance with the stipulations. And that concludes my presentation. I'm available for questions, and Pete Tyke with Newland and Jeff Denzak from Swabeck is here if you need it, if you have any questions for them as well.
Thank you. I have one speaker card. Are there any other speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Okay. And would anyone else in the audience like to speak? Okay, then we have Jennifer Barber. If you want to approach, and I'll read each speaker is limited to 3 minutes. The yellow light and buzzer will let you know when you have 30 seconds left to speak. And before you begin to speak, identify you clearly by stating your name for the record with your name and address. Welcome.
Hello, good evening, Vice Mayor and members of the council. My name is Jennifer Barber. I'm a resident at 18295 West Sweet Acacia Drive in Goodyear. I actually do live in Estrella. First of all, I just want to thank you all for your service. I know what you do is not easy, especially trying to balance budgets and provide wonderful services to our community. And what makes Goodyear great are the wonderful services that you're able to provide. We have a top-notch police department. Phenomenal. We have a top-notch fire department, absolutely phenomenal. And when it comes to this community in Lucero, Newland has done a fantastic job putting this together. I've been through these plans several times. It will be beautiful, and I cannot wait to see it. I think it's going to be a really nice community. My concern are fire services. I know that you have a fire chief who's come to you on a couple of occasions now with red flags saying, wait a minute, we're a little bit strained here with having one fire station in the area just to service the southern portion of the community. And now it's looking like you want to add 1,250 homes to the northern portion of the community. So my question to you, and I know you can't answer anything tonight, but my question would be, as a city, can you guarantee that you can provide adequate fire services to the southernmost resident in Estrella and to the northernmost resident in Estrella? And I know that you don't have people knocking at your door asking about fire services. The reason I'm passionate about this is because I've been a victim of a house fire in my own home on 4th of July in 2010. And if it weren't for this fabulous fire department, I would have lost my house. And I recently just watched a friend lose her entire livelihood in Estrella from a fire. So it's devastating, but I'm also not a person to come and complain and raise problems. I like to offer solutions as well. If this is approved, would it be possible to have a stipulation that a second fire station would at least need to be under development or constructed before this breaks ground? Is that even reasonable? Is it too far into the process to do that? I mean, if you can honestly answer yes, one fire station will cover everybody from north to south in our community, then, you know, I feel really good about that. But if you're even on the fence about it, I ask you to just please consider that. So, thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the audience that would like to speak? Okay, I'm going to close the public hearing, and will the city clerk please read ordinance 16-3333 by title only?
Adopt ordinance number 16-1333, rezoning approximately 617 acres generally located on the west side of Estrella Parkway, south of the Estrella Star Tower, to the intersection of Estrella Parkway and Cotton Lane by amending Section 2C of ordinance number 87-217 as amended, and ordinance number 13-1288, which approved the Callisto Planned Area Development for the property by adopting the Lucero Planned Area Development Amendment dated March 18, 2016, to govern the development of the property, amending the zoning map of the City of Goodyear, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date.
Can I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
And I have a motion from Councilmember Pizzillo and a second from Councilmember Campbell. Council discussion.
I'm sorry. Vice Mayor? Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Ms. Barber, for your comments. I actually have been concerned about some things, and I would actually like to make a motion to go into executive session because I would like some legal advice and discussion about some things.
Before we talk about anything else?
Yes.
Second.
So we have a motion from Councilmember Osborne and a second from Councilmember Stipp to go into executive session to discuss some legal matters dealing with this. So this is a roll call vote or? Okay, roll call vote.
Councilmember Pizzillo?
Aye.
Councilmember Campbell?
Aye.
Councilmember Stipp?
Aye.
Councilmember Homan?
Aye.
Councilmember Osborne?
Aye.
Vice Mayor Loretano?
Aye.
6-0, passes.
So I guess we're going to adjourn for executive session and then we'll come back.
Correct.
Okay. Is this a roll call vote then? Or
I don't believe you need a roll call for this.
just okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Ayes carry. Okay, I guess now we're going to move on to 7.4, which is the next item on the business agenda, is to consider approving 2 contracts for the purchase and delivery and installation of granite. And David Side from Parks and Recreation Manager, he will present.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. Good evening, everyone. It's my pleasure to present tonight's next item on the agenda pertaining to the 2016 Parks and Recreation Department's Asset Management Plan. Tonight, I bring 2 contracts before you for consideration related to granite projects identified in the Asset Management Plan. And although a presentation on rock might not be the most exciting item on tonight's agenda,
Oh, I'm excited.
we're very anxious and excited to see the next portion of our asset management plan move forward, as it will have a direct and very visible impact throughout areas of the community.
Oh, jeez.
Good one. You're all week. So these contracts before you pertain to the project specifically identified in the FY16 Asset Management Plan that was funded as part of the FY16 budget process at approximately $3.4 million that was allocated for this portion. So they include a number of areas in the parks, in the right-of-way, in the medians. These areas are evaluated and prioritized by staff. Our granite is basically estimated at a 15-year life cycle. So those areas that are older than 15 years were essentially past due. Those areas at 15 years were due. And then if an area is coming up on its 15 years, we would incorporate that into the upcoming years of our plan. The 15 years isn't a hard and steadfast rule, but it is a very good guideline for us to inspect those areas. If some areas are at 15 years, yet they do look in good enough condition to push back, we would definitely do that and consider that. Likewise, if there's areas that aren't at 15 years, but they are in dire need of granite, we would consider moving them up. Our overall asset management plan does include flexibility for that type of approach, so we kind of apply that to other areas in addition to granite, but that kind of gives you an idea of how we identify these areas and move them forward. The projects before you tonight are sequenced by location. So I have a schedule of our projects in detail that I'll share with you, and it is a quite extensive project. So we estimate the duration of the entire project at approximately 58 weeks from start to finish. This slide will show you a couple examples of park areas. So as you can see on the picture on the far left, Wildflower Park, That park, we recently installed some new plants. We made some irrigation improvements, and really now that area identified in the picture is really just ready for its top dressing of granite to kind of top it off and finish that project. The other two pictures, Palm Valley Park and Estrella Vista South, those projects, or those areas specifically, will be receiving plants in them. We'll test the irrigation, make sure it's ready to go, and then we'll go ahead and apply the granite on top of that. So it makes logical sequential sense to go ahead, test out our irrigation, make those improvements, put any plants and shrub needs, tree needs that are needed in those areas, and then go ahead and do the granite just to make sure that we're not disturbing granite that we lay down. This slide shows you a couple median areas. So again, there's a couple here, just for example, in Canto. You can see that those plants have been replaced, the irrigation has been tested, and it's just in need of the final step, which is the granite. Likewise, Litchfield, Elliott, you can see those areas. Elliott, for example, you can see those plants are a little bit more mature. We actually made those plant improvements a couple years ago, and now it's just in need of granite, as you can see some thinning areas there. So we're very excited about this. Once we apply that granite, we feel that some of these areas are going to look dynamite, and the community can be very excited and proud of it. The next slide, although it's a bit of an eye test, it kind of gives you an idea of how we have grouped our projects together and the timeline on top associated to the various months of the year. So you can see our 2016 timeline. We're looking to start here in early July, and we'll start with those park projects, areas north of I-10, and then we'll just continue throughout the city, finishing up in Estrella a little over a year from today. Those projects, some will have granite delivered right to the site. Others will have to be queued up and kind of coordinated closely between the actual granite supplier and the installer. But we do feel that we're getting the most bang for our buck by offering two contracts for your consideration tonight. Speaking of the contracts, we basically have two in front of you. We did an invitation for bid specifically for the purchase of the granite and for the actual installation. So tonight we have before you contract 163546 for cutting edge. For the actual purchase of the granite, it's approximately 33,229 tons. That's about 1,300 truckloads. And I think we estimated that would be the equivalent of filling our Goodyear pool about 7 times, 8 times? Something like that. So it's a lot of granite, a lot of rock. Our standard is a 2-inch top dressing on all areas. We've estimated the square footage. We've calculated the tonnage required for that. So we feel very confident that the 33,229 tons will do the job. And for that actual purchase, it's $1,043,851.58. The second contract is for the actual installation. So with that, it becomes a little bit more complex in that we'll have to have traffic control plans. Those will have to be reviewed and permitted to make sure that we're installing those the granite areas in the right-of-way in a safe manner. And that bid that came back was in the amount of $1,384,402.32. And that portion, we recommended an owner's contingency of $50,000 in case there's some unforeseen expenses that would come about. With that, myself and my team, and I do believe there's some representatives from the prospective companies here tonight that are anxious and eager to answer any of your questions you may have. And with that, that concludes my presentation.
Thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Would anyone from the audience like to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion and a second to approve the first contract, CON 16-3546, with Cutting Edge Curbing and Stonework Incorporated, in the amount of $1,043,851.58 for the purchase and delivery of 33,229 tons of granite?
So moved. Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Osborne and a second from Councilmember Holman, and it's open for council discussion.
I have a couple questions.
Joanne.
First of all, McDowell Road, that's the center median going from Dysart to Bullard. Is that what I was reading correctly?
Correct.
Okay. I know that we have had this discussion, but it wasn't in here, so I'm making sure that this granite is larger than sand that we've discussed. I don't remember the whatever size that it's supposed to be, right?
Councilmember Osborne, our past standard was a 3/4 inch minus. And our standard that we're going to is a 3/4 inch screened. So with that, you'll have less foreign debris, foreign matter, if you will. Our hope and expectation is that this granite will endure over time a little bit longer, get us a little bit more of a life to the granite. That was the reason for the change.
And one last question, is it still going to be the same golden desert, or are we going to start new colors? Just curiosity.
Councilmember Osborne, where there are areas of Madison Gold, we will stay with the Madison Gold. If there are areas where HOA has made a change, we're making every effort to match that and make sure that there is a seamless transition and being strategic about what colors we place down. So we've incorporated that into the various granites that we've procured through this process, or hope to procure through this process.
Well, thank you very much, and I know that everybody's going to be excited about seeing that. It's good. It's going to look good. Thank you.
I appreciate the program. I can't count the times that when I have visitors come in that actually look at our city and they think it's brand new because of the pristine look, and I want to make sure we continue that process. And again, the replacement of the granite's going to go away. The one thing when I saw pictures of the plants and all, the only thing I ask is that, as you replace them or as you decide which ones go in there, low water use and height growth, because you go through the city and you see some of them that end up having to be trimmed quite often because they're blocking visibility when you're making left or right hand turns, whatever the case may be. So take that into consideration as they're replacing, putting them in there, so that we don't have unnecessary accidents or safety issues or additional trimming required because of the type of plants we put in there. But no, I appreciate the program, and I think it's long in coming, putting this kind of money into our median strips. Thank you.
Councilmember Stipp?
I had a number of issues with getting the information off the iPad, so if you sent it, I apologize for not having it. But do you have, or can you, when this is all said and done, send a list of what's being done? The entire, these are the types of questions that people ask coming out of church or at the store. Why does this look like that? And I'd love to be able to say these are the areas that we're doing, and this, I just can't say everywhere. So if I could get that, and I apologize if you've sent it, for whatever reason, iPad's running slow to get that stuff. But I too am excited. This is one of those things of taking care of what we got. It's obviously it's $2.5 million worth of taking care of what we got, but it's about. I'm glad the time has come. So if you can just send that offline, that would be.
Councilmember Stipp, absolutely. We have detailed maps, area maps that were part of our bid process. So I'll definitely make sure that you're able.
Even if you have it in a list, that would be fine. From Dysart. Councilmember Osborne mentioned from Dysart to Litchfield on McDowell.
Take it all the way down.
Yeah, just to know what they are, I think would be very helpful. So I don't want to bog it down. Thanks.
And I have a quick question for you on. I couldn't see the map really well, so even with my glasses on, it's part of. We've been hearing about the part of Estrella by MC85 where the Goodyear sign is going up. Is that part in this as well, or is that in another one?
Vice Mayor Loretano, that actually, we had some funds on some median improvements that were unspent. So we are looking to redirect those funds to those projects. So you'll see improvements up that way as well.
Okay, so that's not covered with this one, but it's covered with other funds.
Correct.
Okay, anybody else? Oh, sorry.
Well, I just would like to thank all of your staff and Jeremy and all of his staff for staying with this program. I want to thank you for planting colorful lantana and bougainvillea, which makes our city look so pretty. When the visitors come in the winter and they see we have flowers blooming and plants are blooming, they're astounded because they're coming from areas where they're either covered with snow or nothing grows. So thank you very much. We're looking forward to seeing the improvements. I know it's It is a 58-week process, and we won't be bugging you as you go because you have taken our direction and you're doing what we've asked you to do, but we want to thank you very much for being so attentive to it.
Okay, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes. And now we have a motion and a second to approve the second contract, CON 163582 with Mariposa Landscape Arizona Incorporated in the amount of $1,384,402.32 for the installation of the 33,229 tons of granite.
So moved.
Second. I have a motion from Councilmember Campbell and a second from Councilmember Osborne. Open for council discussion. No more rock discussion. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0. Thank you. Okay, we're now on 7.5. The next item on the business agenda is to consider approving the order for the fiscal year 2017 waste management contract. Barbara Chappelle, our environmental services manager, will present.
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Vice Mayor, council members. My pleasure to be here this evening. I'm going to be presenting a request.
Can you put that a little closer?
That's nice.
Now you shut it off.
Oh, there we go. Is that better? Yes. All right. I'll be presenting a request for a purchase order in just over the $5 million, just over $5 million. Do I click? There we go. So the purchase order is related to a contract that we have with Waste Management for our contained curbside collection of solid waste and recyclables. The original contract was approved on June 19th of 2006. It's been revised a few times, and the most recent contract from June takes us all the way through June 30th of 2019. This most current contract allows for ongoing fuel increases to the dollar amount for fuel and CPI adjustments, and we also see small increases for our growth when we add new customers. So our current fiscal year 16, the purchase order was for $5 million, just under $5,020,000, of which we anticipate spending right down to the last dime. And we are estimating for FY17 to be just under $5.2 million. That's including our anticipated growth and any increases in the CPI and fuel. So because there's an ordinance that requires approval for anything over $500,000, we're here tonight to request approval for a purchase order for waste management in the amount of $5,172,791. That's my short and sweet presentation. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to help answer.
Well, thank you. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Would anybody from the audience wish to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion and a second to approve the purchase order for fiscal year 2017 for the Waste Management Incorporated contract in the amount of $5,172,791?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Stipp and a second from Councilmember Holman. Open for council discussion.
I don't know if you know or not how much of this increase is due to the increased number of residents compared to the CPI adjustment for fuel.
I don't have that breakdown with me. I do have staff here. I don't know if we have brought that particular number, but it's the majority of it is for the addition of our residents. It's for new growth. And it's, it's not a very large increase.
I see Javier coming up behind you.
Are you? Yeah.
Maybe I can add a comment. Actually, it's we would have seen a much larger increase. We're adding about 80 to 100 homes a month. So there's an offset because we have some savings due to the CAMP program being taken in-house.
Right.
So that we would have seen, like I said, a much larger increase. I don't know what the exact numbers are, but
it won't have a bearing necessarily on my vote tonight, but if I can get how much was due to new growth and if any of it was due to fuel. Obviously, watching the fuel prices, they're fairly flat compared to what they were last year, so I'm assuming most of this is due to growth, but it's not good to make a $5 million assumption. I'd just be curious to be able to answer that question if asked.
And we can get that number
later.
for you.
Yeah, thank you.
I basically have the same question. You just beat me to it. So, yeah, if we can just get the breakdown and the increase, it looks to me like it's a very small overall. Some of it's going down as a result of the cans. So if you can show what's growth related, what the break was as a result of bringing the cans in-house, because that's the negative side, and then the growth of the CPI, it would be nice. And again, if anybody outside is asking us that question, we'll just be able to answer it. That's all. Thanks.
Yep, we can get to that number.
Is this the last year for this contract, and will we be going out for bid?
The contract expires June 30th of 2019.
19.
So we actually, yes.
Okay, thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment as I looked through the staff report that I noticed that while there had been an increase due to fuel, there was an adjustment down because the cost of fuel had gone down. And I was impressed with that from Waste Management because it's not very often that you see that voluntarily put into a contract. So I just wanted to comment positively on that.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we will move on to 7.6. The next item on the business agenda is to consider approving a construction contract for the Vados Injection Well Project. And Regis Reed, our Senior Project Manager, and Mark Holmes, our Water Resources Manager, will present. Is this as exciting as the rocks were?
Much more exciting. Thank you.
He's on a roll today.
Available every Thursday night.
Yeah, right. For a break. Just an oral presentation tonight, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council. Just want to give you a quick overview of where we are to date on a very long process so far in project. It was September of 2013 I was before you, and you approved the Vados Injection Well Project. Again, this project is to move away from the soil aquifer treatment site, known as the SAT site, which is a future city center location. And we're moving into injection wells, which is precision injection of reclaimed water in the Vados zone, which is the non-groundwater area. And the project was divided into two phases. And I want to go over some very important aspects of phase one that we've completed. We created a groundwater model, which was used as part of the permitting process for locating the Vados injection wells. Primarily, we worked with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, and Goodyear Tire and Rubber, and also Crane Co. And that was to make sure that the location of the injection wells were not going to disturb the remedial activities of the Superfund and the wharf site. The city received its underground storage facility permit and its aquifer protection permit. It was August of 2015. And it took a little longer than usual. Those permits go about a year before we can receive those. Traditionally, we went a little longer because we worked closely with the EPA and ADQ for the remedial activities of Superfund and wharf site. We also use the groundwater model for our designation of assured water supply renewal, which we just received our decision in order by the Department of Water Resources, which was issued on May 31st of 2016 for a period of out to 2028. So that model was also used for that determination as well. And lastly, we use that same groundwater model for trying to increase the legal withdrawal authority limit for two of our City of Goodyear water production wells, of which we received a 107.5 million gallon per year increase for City of Goodyear well number 22. We're still working with the second well right now. Phase two of the work, August of 2015, that was before you. You approved the design contract with Carollo Engineering for the design and the construction administration. And now to talk about the construction phase, I'll turn over to Regis.
Vice Mayor, member of council, pleasure to be here this evening before you. In December of 2015, the city advertised through a request for qualifications process for construction manager at risk for this project, Vados Zone Injection Wells. Archer Western was a selected firm and provided pre-construction services for this process. Those services consisted of reviewing all the construction documents as they're being designed in the final stages for constructability, and providing value engineering and estimating to ensure the project remained within our budget. As a result of these efforts, Archer Western delivered the guaranteed maximum price for the construction of the project, which is the contract before you this evening. Along with this, we're asking for approval of a $300,000 budget transfer for the expenditure of funds, which will be reimbursed by a Bureau of Reclamation grant. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you both. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Would anybody from the audience like to speak? See none. Can I have a motion and a second to approve the $1,879,136 guaranteed maximum price construction contract with Archer Western Construction LLC for the construction of the Vado Zone Injection Well project, and approve a budget transfer in the amount of $300,000 to the fiscal year 17 budget to expand the Water Smart Grant Award from the Bureau of Reclamation?
So move.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Campbell and a second from Councilmember Holman. Open for council discussion. Councilmember Stipp?
What was the original budget for this?
Councilmember Stipp, the original budget was $2.835 million. That was approved. 2.4 was CIP caregiver funds. $300,000 of that was a Bureau of Reclamation grant, one of only two given the state that year. $100,000 was operational for the designation of assured water supply as part of the operation budget, the renewal for that permit, and then $35,000 was out of operations to look at the increase with legal withdrawal authority.
So when it's all said and done, after we've done our initial permitting and whatnot, are we under, over, where are we at to the budget?
I think from a standpoint, we're going to be slightly under our budget.
Okay, and that is overall that remains in the water resources or the water enterprise
fund.
In the enterprise fund to be used for other construction projects later.
It'll be in the capital improvement fund under water resource and water enterprise.
Yeah, but it's water enterprise money. Yeah, they just want the public to understand that whatever savings that we have there is what we can use for the $57 million of other improvements that we have to do, something to that effect. So just want to make sure we were clear on that. Thanks.
Osborne?
Just a question of understanding. In your staff report on page 2, you did discuss about the injection wells were good for Superfund site areas. So this may sound strange, but are you proposing you're injecting water towards the Superfund? I mean, I don't know how that actually is a positive. So can you just explain it a little more?
Sure, absolutely. That's a great question. Thank you for asking. So we're actually creating a mound at the well location, a mound underground of water. And that actually creates kind of like a hill, if you will, and it actually will move towards the contamination plume area, primarily the Phoenix Goodyear Airport North Superfund site. So they're trying to get the plume to move further to the east. And so we're on the west side of the plume, and by creating that mound, we're actually going to push that plume to the east exactly where they want us to help push that. So we're actually helping with remedial activity for PGA North Superfund.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Passes 6-0. Thank you very much. Thank you. Now we're moving on to 7.7. The next item on the business agenda is to consider approving a communications license for the co-location of a wireless antenna with T-Mobile West on an existing APS service utility pole. Katie Wilkin, our planning manager, will present.
Thank you, Vice Mayor and members of the council. As you stated, this is requesting approval of a communications license with T-Mobile. The area in question is located, and there was a slight typo in the staff report. It's located east of Pebble Creek Parkway and just south of the Roosevelt Canal Trail. The canal itself is south of this facility, but it's south of this trail. And that those typos were in the communications license, but we're already working with the applicant to get that page switched out, and they are agreeable to that. It was a Scrivener's error. This is to locate an array on an existing APS pole. It would extend the pole height approximately 10 feet. This is allowed per the zoning ordinance, and it wouldn't normally come to the City Council for review and approval, except this APS pole is located in city-owned property. Since the APS pole is located in city-owned property, we have to have an agreement with T-Mobile for them to make an improvement to the APS pole. They will make a $3,500 a year annual fee payment during the life of the array being on the pole. This is very consistent with what other cities around the valley do. The current agreement is set to expire in April 2025, but there are options to do 2 5-year extensions, which can be completed by staff. Most of the equipment will be located in the APS facility behind the wall. There is one small piece of equipment located just outside the wall, which you can see a rendering of that here, which this is very typical for these type of facilities. And then, And then at the pole itself, there will be a small facility adjacent to the pole, which really won't be noticeable from the street with the landscaping around it. The visual impact should be quite minimal, and as I said, the zoning ordinance allows these type of improvements without any type of council action. It's just because it's on city property. So with that, that would conclude my presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Would anybody from the audience like to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion and a second to approve the issuance of a communications license with T-Mobile West, LLC, a limited liability company organized under the laws of Delaware, T-Mobile, for the co-location of a wireless antenna array on an existing Arizona Public Service utility pole?
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Councilmember Stipp and a second by Councilmember Osborne. Open for council discussion. Councilmember Campbell?
Well, this is right by my house, and I have lived through all of the discussions several years ago when there was a fear we were going to be building houses right up against the folks that have that back up to this lot before the APS redid their substation, and then they thought the aliens were going to come because the substation expanded and we were all going to die of radiation. So have we had any neighborhood concerns expressed when you did your public hearing to expand the pole 10 feet?
Thank you, Vice Mayor Loretano, Councilmember Campbell. There was no public notice done. There is not a public hearing required for this.
Okay.
So the only public notice was via the agenda that is posted for this council meeting
Okay,
tonight.
and the only thing we're doing is extending the existing pole 10 feet.
Right, and that is allowed
Right.
without a public hearing. And these actually happen all over on APS poles. This particular APS pole is just unique because it's located on city property.
Right, yeah, and is it going to be a palm tree, do we know, or is it just going to be the...
No, the array will be attached directly to the APS
Okay.
pole.
Okay, thanks.
Anybody over here? Okay, so let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? Ayes have it, 6-0. Thank you. We're moving on to 7-8. The next item on the business agenda is to consider approving a new long-term disability benefit for sworn police and fire. Jeannie Rudy, our total compensation administrator, will present.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Loretano and council members. First, I thought, they saved the best for last, and then we moved to consent agenda item for finance policies. Normally, this item would have been a supplemental in the budget. However, we identified the need for this benefit late in the budgeting process, and the tentative budget was already approved. So we have it before you today on business tonight for you to consider approving, and it will be then in the final budget if approved. So employees who will be covered by this benefit is sworn police and fire personnel, and the purpose for providing this benefit is when you have a disability under the public safety retirement, it's kind of an all or nothing. You have to be totally disabled to qualify for any type of disability benefits under the public safety retirement. Compared to under the Arizona state retirement, there is a benefit for long-term disability where someone doesn't have to be totally disabled from performing the duties of their job. They could be temporarily disabled from performing those duties. So what happens is if you have a police or fire sworn personnel who has an illness, and this is an illness of their own, not a work-related illness. If it were a temporary disability and it was work-related, public safety does have a benefit for that. But due to their own personal illness, it does, there's a gap in coverage. So what we're looking to do is to fill that gap in coverage as the employee is waiting to reach their maximum medical improvement, to know if their illness is going to allow them, once they recover, to return to their police or fire position, or if they will be totally disabled and then be eligible for a disability retirement under the public safety retirement system. The benefit pays 60% of their base salary, and for fire that does include their scheduled overtime, and that's up to $6,000 per month. And the cost is 25 cents per $100 monthly. So the city's cost will be about $28,000 annually, and that'll increase based on an increase to employees' pay and as we add police and fire staff. And that completes my presentation. Thank you. If there's any questions.
Are there any speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Is there anyone in the audience who would like to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion and a second to approve an expenditure of $28,000 for a new long-term disability benefit for sworn police and fire personnel to be included in the final fiscal year 2017 budget?
So moved. Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Holman and a second from Councilmember Campbell. Open for council discussion. Councilmember Pizzillo?
Just a quick question. I know the budget's already topped, and this is small in the big scheme of things, but where's the $28,000 coming from? Are you removing money from something that's already approved, or are you going to take it from that appropriation piece that we have for potential, future expenditures?
Mayor, Councilmember Pizzillo, we had not balanced the budget down to the very dollar, so there was adequate resources available to go ahead and fund this from the general fund resources.
Okay, thank you.
Do you have any questions, Bill?
No, I'm grateful that this has come forward. That's I think all I want to say.
I just have a quick question.
Campbell.
Are we going, will the city's portion is 25 cents per $100 of their salary? Is that amount going to stay forever, or does that change every year, our portion?
Councilmember Campbell, that's the quote we have for this year.
Just for this year. So when we go out and get our insurance for whatever the next time, and this will be part of the bid process or something will...
Yes.
Okay.
And the carrier, Councilmember Campbell, is Guardian, and they've given us a great deal because we also use them as our short-term disability administrator.
Sure. Uh-huh.
So if they're on short-term, it'll transfer right over to long-term.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think that's a very important needed benefit, and thank you for putting that forward. So we are ready to vote. All in favor?
Sure. Whoops.
Oh, wait, sorry. Councilmember Stipp.
I think we haven't really talked about it yet for the public's benefit that currently today this does not exist. So if an employee, I always use the example, has an ATV accident on their weekend and breaks both of their legs and is off on some long-term serious injury, there's no benefit for them following the short-term disability window. It just ends, right?
Yes, which is 6 months.
Yeah.
But Councilmember Stipp, if they have additional vacation and sick, they could use that. But
sure, but the same employee that has that same ATV accident who works at City Hall, they continue to go. So I don't, from the public just listening to this, it sounds like we've just created another new benefit for the sworn folks, and that we're actually catching them up. And I think it's important that we make sure that that's very, very clear before we vote on this, that this isn't an added benefit that no other city employee gets. This is actually a benefit that we're bringing them up to what all of the other city employees are entitled to. And I think that that's very important, particularly that in the fact that we've got memorandums of understanding with both the sworn police and fire unions, and this is not part of that. This is a benefit to equalize all of our employees, and I think that's really important for the public to understand. So, when I said I'm grateful that this is here, I probably should have expounded at that point, so I apologize for the interruption, but thank you.
Anybody else?
Well, I was just going to add that I think that when you stated this is, relieving that gap in coverage is huge that everybody understands. So I appreciate that.
Get everybody? Well, again, thank you. And now we'll vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? 6-0 passes. Okay, so now we're going to do 6-9. That was from the consent agenda and was moved. So we will now receive a presentation from staff on agenda item 6-9 that was removed from the consent agenda and moved to the business agenda. We will consider approving making changes to the city fiscal policy, and Lori Ringenroth, which is back up here, our budget and research manager, will present.
Thank you. And we are going to be reviewing the financial policies. You've asked for a little bit more detail than we went over when we presented this May 23rd with the tentative budget adoption. The materials you received included both the strikeout version of the financial policies to show where the changes are, as well as the revised version. It's the same list that you received for the May 23rd meeting. So what I'll do is just kind of walk through each of those to both address if it's changed, why we're recommending a change or making a change, and then also just addressing compliance with regard to the particular item. I thought I'd just start by highlighting the major policy change that's reflected here. Is a result of the discussions that we had throughout the budget process about using general obligation bonds to do some projects in the area of recreation and parks, which has been a high priority for our citizenry. And so the major policy change is increasing from $1.60 to $1.74, the combined property tax rate at which we can begin issuing GO bonds and stay at $1.74 or lower. The other revisions are to clarify, in some cases where it may not have been as clear, there was some duplication, and just some catching up with where we currently are. So just in general, there is an overall set of goals. Basically, we're doing our, the goals here, or the financial policies, are designed to make sure the city can pay its bills today and tomorrow, can address the growth and the needs of our community, and that we are meeting the standards of agencies outside that have recommendations or guidance on how you should manage your finances and do your accounting and your budgeting. So to walk through the policies, the first policy is that ongoing costs should be supported by ongoing resources. We're making a couple changes here. We use the term cash balance in this policy. Cash balance isn't always the best measure for what we really have to spend. We could have somebody else's money because they've given us a deposit for a future project, and that is in cash. So we've changed it to ending fund balance, which would take that into consideration. And we also noted with the addition that we can use the ending fund balance that's associated with the set-asides that we have, the PIC set-aside and now the new operating costs set-aside, as well as contingencies to fund those purposes in the next year. That was one of the things we did when we did broke up the general fund forecast into the ongoing and one-time portions. So it's matching the policy with that change in the approach we made to the 5-year forecast. And so the clarifications here are for essentially consistency in practice. And we did, in terms of compliance, as we presented both the forecast and then when we reviewed the draft budget with you, we presented it to you in the ongoing and one-time proportions so that we could show you that ongoing resources were supporting ongoing costs.
Lori, Sherry.
Yeah, do you have a question there?
Yeah, Vice Mayor. I know we don't want to ask questions as we're going, but there's a lot of these financial policies. So if we wait until the very end,
you have questions on all of them?
Yeah,
Would be
no, not on all of them, but
just go
if,
each
yeah,
one.
if we wait at the very end and then go, okay, go back to number one, I think it may drag it out. So
That's a good point. Could you,
I'm perfectly
when you're
comfortable
done
with that.
one, we'll see if there's questions after each one.
I'm perfect.
Thank you. That probably will be quicker.
yeah, so I have a question.
Okay, well, let's start with Councilmember Stipp.
And I realize the policies are guidelines, but we're writing them very specifically for very specific reasons. So I get concerned about 1C, which is the fluctuating federal grants should not be used to finance ongoing programs. There are police staffing, fire staffing grants that are available for a window. We will fund 12 firefighters or 8 cops or whatever for 5 years under this federal grant. That would technically be in violation of 1C.
Mayor, council member, it does say should not be used, and we do have the ability to come to council and make a recommendation and ask council to say, in this case, we are going to recognize that we have this financial policy, but this is a grant that's ongoing in nature for a certain period of time, and that we could then build into the forecast. If we took on a 3-year grant, you could instruct us, or we could begin then to build into the 5-year forecast. These will come off a grant, and if you want to continue them, you'll have to start picking them up in general funds. So I think that the policy provides room for those types of things.
Perfect, thanks.
No, and I appreciate the explanation because I agree with that logic. I'd rather have the exception and have the ability to should not, and then fix it as opposed to using it, because that creates a problem. Yeah, because you need to recognize the fact that once you're in there, that money's going to go away, so you better set something aside to cover it. So I appreciate that.
Well, if it would have said shall not, it's done. We can't do anything with it. So should gives us all the leeway we need to do. And these are only policies that we're putting forward. But as council, we still have the opportunity to fine-tune even further should an opportunity arrive that we need to have another discussion on one of the policies. We're not putting this in stone.
Correct. Mayor, council member, in fact, that's what we're doing tonight on the $1.74 policy. You've had, on the property tax, you've had substantial conversation, and we're talking about making a change to a policy as a result of that. So we do, in practice, review the financial policies with you every year, and so you have a chance to revisit them every year.
Good, thanks.
Anybody else? Okay, I guess we're ready to go to the second one.
Policy number 2 was about using growth-related revenues to support development-related activity and growth, growth in ongoing operating costs. It was kind of difficult to read and to follow, so we tried to just simplify it and say that we should ensure that growth or development activities are funded commensurate or in proportion to the revenue generated from the related fees. The concept being that you want to make sure that if the revenue's up, that we're supporting the industry. In terms of compliance, the budget, both this year and next year's budget, includes overtime and temporary staffing to keep up with higher levels of development. And we do track development-related revenue separate from other general fund revenues. And we monitor those department budgets on a quarterly basis, if not more frequently, to be sure that we're meeting the spirit of this particular item.
Anybody on this side? Anybody over here? Okay, we'll move to number 3.
Okay, and number 3 is the policy that we will retain a 3-month operating expense. That we will have a contingency in the general fund of the first 3 months of operating cost. In practice, we establish that as 25% of the general fund operating budget. In the FY17 budget, the $17.8 million is at least 25% of the operating budget. In practice, we round it up during the budget process so that if you make changes that move costs, say, from capital to operating, we still have adequate contingency and don't have to make that change as well as we go through the process.
Anybody on number 3? Oh, Councilmember Osborne.
I just wanted to state that, I know that sometimes we get concerned that anything we do here might affect something on our bonding capacity or things like that. And I know that we've had those conversations about the 3 months versus percentages. So I appreciate that you're clearing this up. It's fine. Thank you.
I think we're going to move to number 4.
Alrighty. We're recommending that we eliminate item number 4, primarily because it is there are a couple places where we have some duplication of contingencies in the policies. Number 4 was about having a contingency or a set aside or a contingency of 10% of sales tax revenues. The 25% general fund operating budget contingency is substantially more than the 10% of sales tax. In practice, we have been essentially addressing that contingency within the larger contingency.
Any questions on 4?
Lori, is there something magic about the 3 months from a bonding perspective, et cetera, that we're stuck with that? And I've got a second part to that question.
Mayor, council member, there's not necessarily something magic about it, but it is a good standard. I think we were as high as 4 months previously and brought it down and have had conversations with bond rating agencies about that. So it's not necessarily that there's some magic out there that says you need to have 3 months, but you need to be in a position where you have a good balance in terms of what you're doing in terms of conservatism in your budget and protecting from downfalls. And we have been successful thus far, had our ratings sustained in the most recent process.
Right. And the second part of that, and the reason that I asked the question is we have historically referred to this as the quote-unquote rainy day fund. And others have referred to this as if the city's getting ready to go bankrupt, this will at least keep everybody going for 3 months before we figure out what's happening, which are two kind of dramatically different, uses of the fund. And I know in item 4, the intent was that there be some form of, as it says, revenue stabilization to account for the swings in the sales tax. So is there a clearer understanding by eliminating 4 and not referencing revenue stabilization in 3 that we can use it? Now, having said that, when it was pouring rain in 2009, we didn't touch this fund. So, and I don't know if that was because there was a concern that it was these are the last 3 or 4 months money that we have, we can't touch it to stabilize it. So, is there a way to address both of those with the elimination of 4 and not at least making some reference to the contingency being used for, protecting against, swings in revenue, period, I think is probably a better way to say that.
Yeah, Mayor, council member, we could certainly reword number 3 to include the way in which it's intended to function. The 3-month contingency cannot be used without council approval. And it is in fact an amount, it's backed by resources, and it's the intent that it never be used, and it is there in case of a major issue, but everybody assumes that it won't be touched ever.
Is there a definition elsewhere in the city about this contingency that would leave a future, and I realize future councils can just say, look, hey, we're going to make this 2 months, or we're going to make it 6 months. I mean, future councils can do whatever they want, but I guess I'm just making sure that if you think about what these policies have represented to this council and future councils since they've been incorporated, they've been the gospel. And now we're talking about changing it. So as we get ready to change it, a council 10 years from now can say, well, we've got these policies. The 1.60 is now being changed to 1.74 because of a suggestion that we made, and we never looked at that before. So, I realize there's a double edge to this sword, so I don't know if it matters to anybody else, if we just want to let it fly and let it be generic. I'm not pushing one way or another, I'm just making sure we consider it.
From the 3 months perspective, here's the reason why I like it. First of all, you're right, we didn't have to touch it, which was a blessing. But what is it, 45% of our general fund operating revenue comes from sales tax, something like that. Sales tax is not your most stable revenue, depending on what happens. And again, you could maybe say it's a little ultra-conservative or whatever. But from a bond rating standpoint, I'd rather have that 3 months in there, especially since we get such a large percentage of our money from our general fund money from sales tax is having 3. And I know at one point it was even higher than that because you had to add the 10% and whatever. I think simplifying it with the 3 is fine. I guess my question is, when it comes to contingency reserve, is it necessary to say it can only be touched with a council vote, or is that implied somewhere else within our policy?
Mayor, council member, I believe we'll get to another policy on budget that indicates you must approve uses of the contingency in the budget transfer process. If we don't get there, remind me, but I believe it's one of the policies.
Anybody else on 4? Okay, we're ready for 5.
Number 5 is essentially the policy that says that enterprise funds will be supported by their own revenues, and it clarifies that they should also be paying for indirect costs associated with their operations, such as the finance department. They share a burden of paying for part of the finance department through an interfund transfer. So all that we've done here in terms of a revision is to recognize, it basically said operating revenues should cover capital costs and replacement costs. However, we do use the issuance of enterprise revenue backed and paid for debt service to pay for capital projects. So we just wanted to make it clear that their revenues should support either the capital cost or the related debt service as established in the rate planning process. And in terms of compliance, the water, wastewater, and sanitation funds are 100% supported by their revenues. We do treat the stadium as an enterprise fund on an accounting basis, and it is through your actions and the annual budget partially supported by the general fund.
Anybody on 5?
No, I just want to make a general comment. To me, this is a great policy. Prior to 2009, we were not in compliance with this. I think it was 2009 when we started moving the property tax payment out and started to cover it with the enterprise fund money, so the debt service. So again, sometimes I think we don't probably make this announcement enough to our general public that people north of 10 are not paying for the water company here, because we have multiple water companies. But I really like this policy.
Anybody else on 5? Okay, let's move on to number 6.
Alrighty, and how about we'll do number 6 and number 7. They're both policies that we slightly tweaked for this year as we implemented the asset management program. And so in terms of asset management for the general fund, the FY17 budget funds all of the existing and the 2 new asset management reserves at least the 10-year average, if not higher in the cases where we have some higher costs coming in the next couple of years. In terms of the enterprise funds, we just wanted to revise it to make it more clear this year that the forecast will accommodate the forecasted needs for asset management based on the other plans such as fleet and IT, and that we will also be including that in the budget process as we move forward. And in terms of compliance on that area, we do have the fleet and IT asset management recommendations for the enterprise funds reflected in the FY17 budget.
Anybody on 6 or 7 on this one? No, we're moving along. 8.
Okay. 8 is with regard, the main points in 8 are that we should be doing a financial forecast and that we should be assuring that we're looking at the operating cost of capital projects as part of that forecast. There is a section in the policies on long-term financial planning, so we're recommending deleting the reference to it here and relying on the policy in the long-term financial forecast area. And then when we get to that one, you'll see that we're specifically adding the reference to the operating costs for capital projects in that policy as well.
Anybody on it? Councilmember Osborne?
Thank you. This one did concern me, and it's funny because specifically of this item, I was going to ask this to be removed from consent agenda earlier. But so really, what you're saying is that it's kind of a duplication type of item, because I really think that this was a very important policy.
Yes, Mayor, Council Member, it is a very important policy to have a plan to do long-term forecasting, and we do 5-year forecasting annually as a budget process. We just think that since there's a long-term forecasting section, we should address all the areas associated with that in that particular policy.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else on 8? No? Okay, let's move on to 9.
9 says we'll follow the law. So in terms of, there is one change, though, to this policy, because at the state level, they've changed the terminology for the lottery funds, and so we're correcting it to show what the lottery funds are now called and what they must be used for. In terms of compliance, the lottery funds are used for public transportation. The second one, point B, talks about HERF, or Arizona Highway User Funded Debt Service. We don't have any, so we are in compliance. And then the last one talks about the maintenance of effort requirement, also associated with HERF. We substantially exceed the maintenance of effort requirement, and that is also audited annually by the auditors that do the financial statement, consistent with state statute, and we've received a notice of compliance with that.
Anybody on 9? No? Seeing none, let's move on to 10.
Okay, now we're moving into the debt management policies. And this is the area where we have the significant policy change, which is changing that rate at which we can begin to issue GO bonds to a combined rate of $1.74 for the primary and secondary property tax. That policy change supports what is presented in the 10-year CIP. There's, in terms of compliance, we have no short-term debt, which is addressed in B or in A. So B does not apply as well. We do have a coverage ratio of 8.9 on the PIC debt compared to the 1.5 and the 1 in the policy. And then there is no new GO bonded debt in the FY17 budget because right now in FY17 that combined rate is still, it will be $1.8623. So we're in compliance from that perspective.
Anybody on 10? Yes, Councilmember Brazil.
You've heard this from me before, but I'm not a big fan of focusing on rates. Just never have been. It's a mathematical calculation. I prefer the focus be on the levy and the growth of the levy versus what the actual calculation is. So, I'm not going to vote against it just because of this, but when it comes time to selling bonds, I'm going to be looking at our growth of our levy, not necessarily what the end rate's going to be. So, and again, that's nothing new that you've heard from, that you're hearing from me.
Anybody else? No? Okay.
And then we'll continue on with the debt management. Again, there's no revisions proposed here, but basically this says that we will maximize our primary property tax, which we are doing in the FY17 budget, that our bonds will all be investment grade, which they are, including our most recent evaluations, that enterprise revenues will pay enterprise debt, and that the general fund debt to non-construction sales tax is less than 10%, and we're below 2% right now.
Anybody on the second half? Go ahead.
Just a general question when it comes to debt. And I know we have some that uses general fund money to fund debt payments, ballpark, PIC, et cetera. Do we have any specific percentage allocation? Because to be honest with you, I'm not a big fan of using general fund operating revenue for debt service. Just never have been, because I think that should be used for ongoing expenses. But sometimes you can't, all right? And we have a ballpark that's using PIC, which is general fund operating revenue. And we have the lease that we converted so that, for this building here is the same way. Is there some type of statement in there that kind of discourages that type or anything over a certain percentage of your general fund operating revenue as a percentage of what's actually being used to pay debt service? Did I miss it in the overall?
If you'll look at G, bonds should not be financed with general funds unless necessary, and so it is a should not. So it would be, certainly when we're going to issue debt, we would be coming to council and disclosing if that was the intended funding source.
Are we over 10% now?
With the 1.4 million that's budgeted directly in the general fund, we're under 2%. If you include the stadium revenue, we're under 10%.
We're under 10?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, anybody else on? Okay, let's move on to number 11.
Okay, number 11 is where we get into the budget amendment practices. And this is, if you'll look at A, this was another case where there was some kind of contingency mentioned. It doesn't seem appropriate in a section on budget amendment in terms of setting a contingency. And again, this was another one where the 3-month policy in number 3 far exceeds what this particular contingency would establish. So we're recommending striking that reference in A. B is where we're talking about, where we were talking earlier about using the contingency. B says that contingency uses must be specifically approved by the City Council. So that is where those uses of the contingency are controlled in a policy. And then in C, we're clarifying what our current practice is with regard to budget transfers. We've got a lot of change and a lot of discussion over the last year on budget transfers. The shifts in appropriation between lines of appropriation are the budget transfers that you approve. This called for the mayor to approve budget transfers. In practice, the City Council approves those. So we're changing that, or recommending changing that particular item, and then just clarifying budget versus appropriation. In terms of compliance, there have been, under A, it would be if you were trying to increase that bottom line, $236 million this year or $254 million next year. There's not been any attempts to do that or desire to do that. You do approve contingency uses through budget transfers, even if they're out of the city manager's contingency and within his authority, they still come to you for approval through the budget transfer approval process. And that you do approve, and then that's making it consistent with what you do.
Okay, let's go to 12.
Okay, budgetary control system. Essentially, this requires monthly budget status reports to the council. We did go from quarterly to monthly this year. We do produce monthly reports that are available. However, we've revised the routine report to the City Council. We struck the word financial in item B because there is not a strategic financial plan. There is a strategic plan, but not a specific strategic financial plan. So just clarifying the wording. And then in terms of the community relations annual budget, that budget has not increased, so we're in compliance with that particular item.
12? Yes, Councilmember Stipp.
On 12B, I realize there is no strategic financial plan, but there is also no state statute requiring that we have a strategic plan.
You're correct.
So I think we need to reword this.
Okay. I
because
agree with you.
At this point, it indicates that a strategic plan is required by state statute, and that's just not. I don't know what the solution to this is.
We could actually strike this. I don't think that it adds. We do long-term financial planning in other ways. So in some ways, the annual budget process does this, and the 5-year forecast does this. But certainly, we're open to whatever change you'd be interested in.
Well, I could make the argument that a strategic plan is a form of budgetary control system, and that perhaps we just need to strike to adjust the plan and assumptions to remain viable, period.
Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, let's move to 13.
Okay, we'll move into revenue policies. We're not recommending any changes to the policies in this particular area. Most of this is focused on are we looking at our costs and our fee recovered revenue or fee recovered costs to make sure the fees are recovering the cost? Are we updating that impact fee plan to make sure that we are bringing in the cost of what development costs to add infrastructure? And, so both sides of that. So the FY17 budget does include both a cost of service and a cost allocation plan, as well as an impact fee analysis, consultant services for those. And overall, the budget, we annually review the sources of the revenues for the budget in terms of item A.
I just have a question. Where are we, since we're not changing this policy, where are we in the 3 to 5 year user fee examination and the development fee examination. Are we in year 3 or year 4?
In the Mayor, Council Member, in the impact fee area, those new fees were implemented in August of 2014. So we will just be getting into the 3-year window. It will be in the 3 to 4 year window when we actually implement those in terms of the study that's planned. In terms of the user fees, it's been about 6 or 7 years since we've had an outside consultant do that analysis. However, we've done internal analyses during that time period in terms of looking at user fees and looking at the costs related to those. So the FY17 will be bringing in an outside consultant to again look at that in more depth than we have.
So, but we're staying competitive as far as you know.
To the best of our knowledge, yes.
Anybody else on 13? No? Okay, let's go to 14.
Okay, we're moving into the capital budget policies. The first is that we should be preparing a long-term capital plan, and that in this case it does allow unfunded projects. The city practices we do not have unfunded projects in the CIP. All the projects in the CIP are fundable within the forecasted resources or the funding sources that are used for that program. It also then addresses that we address the operating budget impacts of capital projects. What we've done is stricken out over the next 3 to 5 years. In essence, we just need departments to give us what they believe the annual operating costs are, and then we build that into the 5-year forecast and inflate those costs consistent with other assumptions we make about the budget. So we're certainly continuing to say we need the operating costs. We're just saying we don't need the departments to make some kind of inflationary assumption for several years about those costs. And in practice, we're gathering operating costs that are projected to be greater than $10,000.
Do you want to go ahead and do the second part of it? The other slide.
Okay. And then in terms of, this is an area where there's an additional provision with regard to adjusting the budget. In the case of capital projects, this policy specifically says, even if it doesn't cross lines of appropriation or the other terms under which a capital item budget transfer comes to you, if it's a $75,000 or greater change to a CIP project, those items come to you for approval.
Anybody on 14? No? Okay, last one, 15.
So here's the area with the long-term financial planning. It says it will adopt the budget within the context of a plan. And that will establish assumptions and forecasts for a 5-year horizon. And here's where we've made sure we recaptured that item from the one that we proposed deleting to specifically address the operating costs for capital project items in the capital plan. In terms of 5-year, we presented 5-year forecasts this year for the general fund, both ongoing and one time. In the sanitation fund and the impact fee funds. The water and wastewater multi-year planning certainly addressed both the operating cost and the capital projects as well. And you have also included in the FY17 budget a specific set aside to start not only recognizing those operating costs are out there for capital projects in the future, but starting to fund them as well.
Anybody on 15? 15? No, I think we got them all.
So if there's any other questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Otherwise, we're looking for you to approve the financial policies, and we had one revision that I know we're going to be making, or sounds like you would like to include.
Okay, so are there any speaker cards?
No, Vice Mayor.
Would anyone from the audience like to speak? Seeing none, can I have a motion and second to approve changes to the city's financial policies?
Vice Mayor, I'd like to make a motion that we approve the city financial policies with the change to item 12B as suggested.
And do I have a second on that?
Second.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilmember Stipp and a second from Councilmember Pizzillo. Open for council discussion. Any other discussion? We could kind of covered it all. So all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Carries 6-0. Thank you very much. Okay, we're almost done. Informational items. Does the council have any comments, I can't say that. Thank you. I'm getting tongue-tied. Or reports on current events. We'll start over here with Councilmember Stipp. Do you have anything? Councilmember Osborne?
I have two. I just wanted the public to be aware that this past weekend, the mayor and I attended a memorial for one of our past council members, Mr. John Leach, and it was very nice, and I just wanted to show respect for a man that did wonderful things for our city and was also an outstanding science teacher for the Agua Fria High School District for a long time. So really nice memorial for the gentleman. And also I'm really proud of the people at the Abrazo West Hospital for having a water drive where they actually took in just an incredible amount of cases of water. I want to say it was like 1,500 cases of water. Plus they had a cereal drive, which I thought was pretty unique, giving to the food banks for the kids right now through the summer that, may or may not be getting breakfast in the morning. So I just want to give my hats off to them.
Well, I just want to share something with you. Over the past couple of weeks, Chief Luigi and I have been sharing emails on calls that our fire department has had because I thought something was wrong with my computer. And he told me that between May 13th and June 6th, that our fire department had responded to over 530 calls. So if you divide and do the math, in 23 days, they have 23 calls a day. We have 6 crews on duty, so each crew has at least 4, but not all crews would have it. So you can see that our fire crews are very, very busy, and I hope that our residents will take the time, if they see our firemen out and about in the community, to thank them for their service, as well as thank our very dedicated police department for their service as well. We appreciate all they're doing, and I know sometimes people say, well, we don't hear the fire engines sirens, so maybe they're not busy, but they are very busy, and we just want to thank them for it.
Okay. So does the city manager have anything to report?
Actually, I do. Under code, it is a responsibility of the city manager, who I'm filling in for, to introduce to the council any new directors that have been hired. And so tonight I have the pleasure of introducing our new finance director, Doug Sandstrom. He was selected as new finance director for the city of Goodyear and started Tuesday, May 24th. He comes from the city of Casa Grande, where he served as a finance director since 2013. Doug has 20 years in municipal government, finance, and management. He holds a master's degree in public administration from the University of Wisconsin and a bachelor's degree in political science economics from St. Cloud State University in Minnesota. He's a resident of Goodyear and wanted to work for the city that he has called home for the last 16 years. Doug brings a wealth of experience and expertise, and so we'd like to welcome Doug to the City of Goodyear team and family.
Thank you very much. Thanks for that introduction. I think it sums it up pretty well. And I've had a chance to meet all of you. I'm really looking forward to getting in and really learning everything there is about the city and making an impact on the city that I do call home. And I will have to say that having a first council meeting where you go through financial policies is an amazing thing. So it was really great. I'm glad to be here, and I'm looking forward to working with all of you.
Well, welcome. Thank you.
And I have one more item. It's quick, but very important. During the Leadership West Annual Awards Banquet held on Friday, June 3rd, 2 of our council members were recognized. Councilmember Joanne Osborne was recognized as the Business Leader of the Year, and Councilmember Wally Campbell was recognized as the Civic Leader of the Year. Press releases will be issued tomorrow, notifying the public of that, followed by posting to city social media accounts, and we will also help add that to your individual council pages on the website. So I'm asking everybody to help me in congratulating both of them on these prestigious awards. And that's all.
Anything else? No, that's it. Okay. Is there any staff summary of follow-up actions? How about, does council have any inquiries of staff? Oh, hey, okay. So our next meeting will be a work session, a special meeting on June 20th. And having no further business, we are now adjourned.
Good job, dear Vice Mayor.
8:26.